What's up, everybody? Welcome. We just did 2 minutes of content, and I didn't hit the go live button. And then I had to interrupt John and say, this is not getting recorded or streamed. Yeah, I started this show with a salute, John, and I got saluted the other day by a guy wearing a hat that said he was a Vietnam veteran, Navy. And I'm walking by. I was coming out of a bathroom in a restaurant. He was like walking down the hallway in. He salutes me, and I didn't know what to do. I thought, well, I'm not allowed. I'm not a like. I'm not in. I can't salute. I don't have the right to salute. And then I thought, well, maybe there's somebody behind me. So I turn, and there's nobody there. And then he like kind of had passed me by then, so I didn't do anything. And yeah, I worried that he felt disrespected, even though it was not what I intended.
You should stop. Obviously. Listen. Come from a long line of people, come from Israel, mandatory service for all men. I somehow avoided that because I moved here. Potentially,
dad in the United States Air Force.
The dad in the United States Air Force. Listen. I have some stuff in common with you, but not totally.
I have a USAA membership. Can I show you that?
I got no room to talk either. Got a long line of WW2 and Vietnam veterans in the lineage of MIDDLEKAUFFs and the Lears, and you and I are USAA members actually.
You're a USA member?
Oh, big time. Now, one thing I've learned
all these years,
a lot higher on the car insurance than, or maybe it's home insurance, one of the two.
Oh, okay. All this time you've been a USA member?
Yeah, I mean, I don't bank with them.
Gotcha.
I use them for car insurance, umbrella insurance, just a couple other little things.
Maybe they should sponsor the show, even though they spend a lot of time advertising, telling people that you can't be a member. It's one of the weirdest ad campaigns I've ever witnessed. USAA, you're not eligible. That's their ad campaign.
Well, that's another thing, right? So you talk about WW2, Vietnam. I guess so many people are just grandfathered in that they're going to have that forever. Because there's not, I mean, the next war could just be all she wrote for everybody. That, you know, I would imagine a lot of people are like me and you, people that, you know, have nothing to do with the military beside feel it deep inside. You know, I root for it. I'm as patriotic as you get for a young millennial. But yeah, I didn't do anything to earn that right to be part of it.
I got to think that the membership is a lot less handy in 2023 than it was in 1983 or something like that.
I bring nothing to the table.
Same. This is what we do. What's up, everybody? Good to see you on YouTube. If you're watching, we appreciate it. Hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel. Thank you. If you want to check out the podcast, it's down in the description below, and the reverse. If you listen to the pod, check out the YouTube. You can watch us there, and you can also watch just parts of the show there. Yeah, and you get 20% off with code HAM on the GameTime app. You also got that going right now. Our buddy Greg Moss going to a baseball game
and Harry's, I think, HAM as well.
Yeah, and Harry's. So our buddy Greg the other day was like, I'm going to the White Sox Cubs or something like that. I said, well, use promo code HAM, GameTime app.
He went to Chicago?
He is going to Chicago. Maybe this weekend, actually. Something like that.
Gotcha. So. I saw, what's his name, the beat cancer. Just ended up on the injured list.
Liam Hendricks.
IL throws me off. Like, listen, disabled list. Like, no one's fucking offended. Just call it the DL. I don't really like that transition. Sometimes I see the IL, I have to like, what? Oh, yeah.
International League. You're big thinking about
I'm just thrown off.
International League, yeah.
Unnecessary. Did you see the highlights of the dude from Cincinnati who looks like
Yuri? What's his name?
Dela Cruz or something? I don't know. He looks like Ken Griffey meets like Tyreek Hill, but he's Jalen Ramsey's height. I don't know. He looks incredible.
You saw he did what a few guys have done. You see that he was part of. He got one of those loans. A few guys have done this over the years. The stories come up where you basically take a loan against your career earnings. So whatever he got, maybe he got like $1 million 2 years ago or something.
Pretty risky if you can't hit the curveball, right?
Well, no, you don't. It's not risky if you can't hit the curveball because you don't pay anything back. They take 10% of your future big league earnings. So let's say I don't know what the loan is. It's $1 million or $2 million or $3 million. It's a healthy loan.
Guy, that is fucking insane.
He owes these guys 10% of his career earnings.
Isn't that being a loan shark and illegal?
It seems I don't quite understand how they. I don't know what are the rules of loan sharking. Just predatory interest rates. Is that what a loan shark is?
I'm just pretty sure that that term, which feels like it's close under that umbrella, is a illegal activity in America? Isn't that something the mob did for a long time?
Yeah,
Take loans or take money from you or give you money for future ownership of the business. Take advantage of you. To me, 10%, if that guy ends up being $100 million player, is insane.
yeah. I think somebody said one of the Padres. I don't remember.
Why does he need the money so bad?
Well, I mean, who knows? 3 years ago, someone says, you can have $1 million right now. Maybe you really need the money, right?
Oh, he did this, you're saying, before he got up to the big
He didn't
leagues?
just do it today. Yeah. Ellie De La Cruz, 10% of his earnings. A company called of course, Big League Advantage is the name of the company.
I think he'd like it out on that one. Again, long way to go. Baseball's weird, but shit.
What was his Ellie De La Cruz? Before we get to some more stuff here, Ellie De La Cruz loan. Sorry, I should have been ready for this information.
No, this just came out. Don't even worry. I think that is, that's not fair.
So for some reason, Fernando Tatis did this, and they made $27 million off of his last contract. This company.
Can you imagine once you sign that big contract, you're paying your agent, you're paying fucking Uncle Sam, especially Tatis, a shitload of money. You also have to pay these guys $27 million. I mean, Tatis is not even a majority shareholder of his $200+ million contract because close to half goes to government. You got to pay a couple percent to the agent.
That's right.
This guy $20+ million. What was his contract, like $300 million? It was big.
Yeah, it was
280 or something.
Daniel says it's not loan sharking since they can end up with nothing as opposed to always being guaranteed something. The CEO of the company says they've raised $244 million to invest in players. They haven't gotten even $50 million back. So I can't find how much they gave.
I do think it's fair if we just use baseball. It's risky. It's it's riskier than football.
Because guys are taking these loans as single A guys, right?
I would say in football, if you could get 3 first-rounders a year for 5 straight years, you're gonna easily make your money back. Where in baseball, you could miss 9 of 10 guys, right? Maybe pretty easy. Like this De La Cruz guy, for as sweet as his 1 home run and his triple, he's the fastest guy I think in the history of modern baseball. Triple, like home to third. He got there in 10 seconds. It looked like a fucking gazelle. He's 6'5", going around. His triple was more impressive than his home run, and his home run was 460 feet, and the lefty looked sweet.
Yeah.
For every guy like that, and there's no guarantee, you're probably swinging and missing a lot. Ton of pitchers. I saw the one pitcher who the Mets bowed out on. Remember? One of the 2 Vanderbilt guys. He got hurt, so it's like they were right.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Mickey Mantle famously ran to first base in 3.1 seconds. So going home to third in 10 is. So the CEO of this company, Big League Advantage, claims that when they started loaning him money, his odds of being a major leaguer with less than 3 years of experience, so to not make it more than 3 years as a big leaguer, were 87%. So there's a 13% chance, they claim, based on history and age, whatever, that he would be a big leaguer with a 4-year career.
Yeah, or more. Baseball's got to be tricky.
Baseball's tough. By the way, before we get some mailbag questions to get to, we got a tweet here from JR who says, y'all got to get Quinn Matthews from Stanford on the pod. Kid is on the mic, legendary performance. The reason I want to mention is because the Stanford pitching coach is our boy, Thomas Eager.
Learn by doing.
Learn by doing, Cal Poly. You know him from way back in the day. I don't know if you saw what happened. Stanford in an elimination game. This pitcher Quinn Matthews threw 156 pitches and 16 strikeouts.
They lost though, correct?
No, they won. So they're
going to Omaha.
No, they got to play again Monday night. If you're listening to this after the fact, you know what happened. So
he threw 156 pitches.
156 pitches on Sunday night, 16 Ks, and they came out to maybe take him out of the game with 2 outs in the 9th, and he storms off the mound. And I guess our boy Thomas Eager said to him. His line was, "We need to have an adult conversation. Don't walk away from me."
So did he stay in the game?
Stayed in the game. He's like, "I got this guy." And Thomas was like, "We need to have an adult conversation. Hold on."
But he was already at what? 148?
No, he was at 153 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So he got the guy to bounce out to third base. But
is that? I'm not.
Big
Not
debate
great
going
for
on,
the
John,
kids' future
in the
right?
baseball world. Big debate going on right now. Some would say it's just that nobody does that anymore. Others would say in the age of pitch clocks, people are still getting Tommy Johns left and right. I mean, DeGrom just got hurt and he hasn't thrown 100 pitches except like twice in the last 2 years. So,
Bro, Strasburg's never to be seen again. His career's over. Nerve.
And how about that? We were just talking about him the other day.
So was this guy like a legit prospect?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't throw 98. That's the one thing with him. He's not Kumar Rocker. He's not a top 5 pick, but he's a really good pitcher of the year in the league. Really good player.
Who's Stanford playing?
Texas.
Augie Garrido ain't walking through that door.
It's like 90s baseball. Yeah.
I love it when a good Augie Garrido Instagram of him just undressing the
Just
team.
ripping them.
Good times.
John, we got some mailbag questions. You can enter the mailbag by going to our iTunes page where you can watch our get our podcast and leave us a review, 5 stars. We appreciate it. And leave a question. We appreciate that. Helps the show when you do that. If you've already done that and you want to get a mailbag question or whatever, maybe use Spotify or something else is something you do, you can also email the show. The email link is in the description of the YouTube and the podcast. It's promo code ham@gmail.com. Promo code ham@gmail.com. So here we go. As always, real questions from you, real listeners. John, up first. From Pete, he says, did you guys see Balky was back at it again, coaching up the Jags secondary on the practice field? You think he goes into the Hall of Fame as a GM or a coach? Great question, Pete. You know, do you have a comment on that?
No.
I did not see that he was back on the practice field at OTAs. Is that even allowed?
I didn't know that he just leans DB. You know, I knew the one time Jimmy Ward had talked about it. You know, I just assumed he was kind of in the vicinity, so he kind of gave a pointer. I didn't know like that's his position of choice. I didn't know if he roamed. Pretty clear he views himself, all else fails, he'd just become a DB coach.
Is that Mayock's thing too? Was Mayock a DB?
But he played defensive back in the National Football League. He got drafted. He fucking played on a team that had Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick on the coaching staff. So, yeah, I give Mayock a little more breathing room of the guy got pointers from Belichick in like 89 and played at Boston College. Balky Bemidji State, I'm sorry, it doesn't quite resonate.
Good pull.
Does look good. You know, he
does look good, yeah.
The coaching outfit is natural on him.
So it actually made me think.
Doug not really confrontational. Like, he's not going to argue with him on the practice field. That's not his style.
Probably just flat doesn't care, right?
Who's he really talking to, you know?
Yeah. It did get me thinking. This question did get me thinking. Obviously, it's a joke. He doesn't mean it. But it did get me thinking. How far away is Trent Baalke, or any GM for that matter, from the Hall of Fame? And the answer is that Baalke is closer to Monty Osenfort than he is a Hall of Famer. Do you know how many total contributors there are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? So contributor means not a player, not
Wasn't
a coach.
Ron Wolf the first GM to go in?
Coaches are in as a separate. Ron Wolf, I don't know if he was the first GM, but he's in. Bobby Beathard, who is a GM, right, is in.
Do you have the year that he went in?
I'll tell you the list. I don't have the years. Well, maybe I have the years. Let's see. I can tell you.
I would say Ron Wolf went in definitely the last decade. There have been a lot of coach that have operated as the GM, right? Obviously, Al Davis is in. I think Jerry Jones, I think, is now in. They are the GMs, but I would not put the guy that signs the check who claims to be the GM is the same thing, right?
No, and GM goes in as contributor. So if you're not a head coach and if you're any of the other things that are not head coach or player, then you're a contributor. So that can be. If
the Eagles just would have beat the Chiefs, is Howie Roseman an NFL Hall of Famer? Multiple Super Bowls with multiple different coaches. The first 2 Super Bowls in Philadelphia Eagles.
You know, I was wondering about Howie because he's only
like 46, 47 years old.
There's only 31 contributors in the Hall of Fame.
Does that count writers?
It counts. I've got contributors as everybody. So that is not a player or a coach. So
Eddie
Bolin, Bidwell, Gil Brandt, Al Davis, DeBartolo, George Halas, Jerry Jones, Lamar Hunt, Curly Lambeau, 1 Mara, 2 Mara, Bill Polian, class of 2015. Dan Rooney.
I guess Ron Wolf probably, I would imagine, went in before Polian. So that's...
Ed Sable, Steve Sable. The Sables just went in, or Steve just went in. So maybe is there a separate writers wing? Is that possible? As I'm looking at the Hall of Famers, those are the categories. So that is to say, like, even Howie Roseman, if he's going to be a Hall of Famer, he's accomplished a lot. Still a ways to go, right? He's won how many championships now?
One.
Bobby Beathard won 4 and 7 conference titles.
I got a name for you.
Ron Wolf won 3 and went to 5. Yeah.
I'll tell you a guy who has 2 and, I mean, gets a lot of acclaim for pounding the table for the greatest quarterback potentially in modern, post-Brady is going to be Mahomes. But Veach has 2 Super Bowls, and they ain't going away. Right?
Yeah.
Him and Howie fall under the same category of, these guys are in their 40s. When I think of Polian, even with like Peyton, he felt old. Like Polian felt like in his peak GM, like late 50s, early 60s, right? 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Veach and Howie feel young. I mean, how they
like
are.
Watching an Eastwood movie. I watched an Eastwood movie the other day from like 1966. I'm like, my God, I think he's 65 in this movie.
Yeah.
It's crazy. That's how Polian was. You're right. Those guys are young, but it takes like 5, Ron Wolf with 5 Super Bowl appearances and 3 wins.
Yeah. Polian was the GM of the Bills. So he rattled off 4 appearances, right?
4
and
appearances.
then with Peyton Manning, they lost 1 to the Saints. So he has 5 appearances, and then the 6th one I guess they won before they went to their second one. But my point is, 6 appearances, 1. 6 appearances in the Super Bowl as the GM is a fucking shitload, right? Like if Veach gets,
I've got him at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe he was only with the Bills for 3 of those, I think, from what I'm reading here. Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't officially the GM, and maybe they're number 2 or something.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, so he did go. He might not have been there for the last one because he did go to an AFC Championship game with the Bills previously. So he went to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 conference championship games. The point is, like, it is hard. That's not a bulky thing. It's just I did not quite realize how hard it is for those guys to get into the Hall of Fame, which is there's only 31 quarterbacks in the Hall.
Let's say the Jags the next 5 years win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Bulky's the GM.
Yeah.
Do you like if Jerry were to pass away and X whatever GM, I just don't know if you get as much credit with the Cowboys. You do it with the Jags. That'd be one of the more eye-opening accomplishments in the history of pro sports. The Jacksonville Jags win like if the 49ers win one. You look at some of these big brands, you're like, yeah, they've won them before, win it again. Even if there's been a long period between championships. Say the Jacksonville Jaguars are the Super Bowl champs, which inevitably, if this quarterback becomes a top 5 guy, they're going to have some shots. Like they're going to be in the second round of the playoffs in a tie game in the 4th quarter. They'll be 8 quarters away, right, if they win that game. It'd feel a pretty big moment for a guy's career. Would Doug be in? Super Bowl champion Eagles, Super Bowl champion Jags? How many coaches win Super Bowls multiple places, right? Andy didn't. Walsh didn't. That'd be a pretty unique thing to have on the resume.
Aren't there so Bulky winning 1 Super Bowl with the Jags, I don't think gets him into the Hall of Fame.
Well, it doesn't guarantee it, but
I don't think it gets him in. I think he'd have to go to 3. You just look at what these guys have. It's just their careers are. He'd have to. What he'd have to do also is he's already been to 1, but he would have to do it in a way. I think part of the long-term accomplishments of these guys is evidence that you can't just live. If you're a contributor like a GM, you don't get to go to the Hall of Fame off 1 quarterback. As a coach, you probably can, right? But I don't know if GMs kind of get that much.
Well, would Doug Peterson be a lock if he wins? If he's the head coach, play caller, Jags?
I think so. I mean, Joe Gibbs is in the Hall of Fame. What did he win? 2 Super Bowls?
Yeah, same team though.
Yeah, no, Jimmy Johnson
not in. Oh, got in, didn't he?
Yeah, Jimmy got in a couple of years ago.
I do think you say you win Super Bowl multiple teams. That's
yeah.
pretty incredible accomplishment as a
And
coach.
the team you beat the first time was, you beat the Patriot, you beat Belichick in a Super Bowl, and then you take the Jags. I'm with you.
Shanahan's not in. He's got 2.
Dick Vermeil has 1.
I always thought that was
a stretch.
Yeah.
Vermeil only coached in 2 conference championship games. And he won but he did find Mark Wahlberg on the practice field. So
easier to get in, I think, as a coach than it is. GMs, as Phil Savage always said, we usually just get 1 job. Some of these coaches get 3 or 4. It's just you're fighting an uphill battle on a lot of different angles and stuff.
You're right. It is easier. I mean, 29 head coaches in the Hall of Fame, 31 contributors, but some of those are owners. So.
I even think let's roll it back. I think it's pretty. It's Trent Baalke was never guaranteed another GM job when he got fired from the 49ers. Right? Like, look at Thomas Dimitroff.
Even got this job as an interim.
Exactly. And, had to do some taking some people out in the neck. Thomas Dimitroff had a lot of success. Went to a Super Bowl, went to another. He is not guaranteed ever. Scott Pioli, not guaranteed ever again, and didn't end up getting one. Some of these guys, you get your shot, it never comes back around. I always say this. I see Tannenbaum's got Spielman doing content for him on the 33rd team. Rick Spielman was a legitimate GM, drafted a bunch of Pro Bowlers, all sorts of positions. That team won. If you said, like, coin flip, does he get another GM? You just say, history would say probably not. They keep going to these, what's the Minnesota, the former 40, like all these guys, I've never even heard of this guy becomes a GM.
Monty?
Over Spielman. Yeah, no.
Quessy.
Quessy.
No. Yeah.
Quessy, Monty.
Monty. I just was.
But if you're Rick Spielman, you go like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I've proven it. Like Pro Bowler, what position? I've done it. Big trades, done it. Drafts, coaching searches. I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
And it just feels like, I don't know, ageist. Is it that? Remember Jed when he first took over, got sued for like firing some old people? But I do think though, which I think is stupid. Like, yeah, maybe you're not good enough. You're old. I'm sorry. I don't really care. But I do think there's some of it like everyone kind of just looking for the shiny toy. It's why when Arians and Zimmer, I think, are good examples. Like, that's really not been in vogue the last decade. Everyone's kind of looking for Kyle, McVay, Sirianni's.
Well, I can't wait. I haven't read it yet, but
Steikens, Gannons
sent me an excerpt of. I guess there's a big Bruce Bochy article today. It's like talk slow, walk slow, think fast, or something. I love a good Boch.
But see, like even he. Like, let's say Doug were to win another Super Bowl, get fired. He had so much, people were interested in him.
They were, yeah.
Especially owners. I would imagine part of that is the ownership led the charge on him.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I also think if you're a GM, you got to see, like, God, if I'm an analytics guy and he would buy into it, maybe he actually has some information that would be useful to me, right? Like knowing how to manage a team.
I'm pretty sure they're going to win their division, who has the defending champs and one of the best little runs we've seen in recent memory in the Astros.
I think they got the best record in baseball right now, right? Even better than the Rays.
They're not that good if you remove him, right?
That's the debate of baseball. Like, what's a manager worth? But
I'd say clearly
I know the Giants
because I've watched that team. They suck.
Without him. Yeah. Howie belongs in the NFL Draft Hall of Fame if there was such a thing, says David.
See, that's not. I mean, he's missed a lot.
I think he's just saying, like, he's a great drafter.
I think he's a better wheeler and dealer.
A wheeler and dealer, yeah, maybe you're
because
right.
Just like anybody, he's taken from the Washington State tackle. Was it Andre Dillard? Does that name sound familiar?
That's correct.
Who never ended up starting. But I think he'd say, well, he never ended up starting because we found this dude from Australia in the 7th round who's a max player. So it's like,
was the firefighter his pick?
It was Andy. That guy was good in college. He really was.
What was his
really
name? Danny
good.
Watkins?
He was really good.
But he was 28, right? In a firefighter?
No, like 26, yeah. But he's a guard. We're going to move him tackle.
Had he just played football or had he taken a break from football to firefight?
No, he was just firefighting kind of on the side.
Got it.
It was a
As
passion
most
of his.
big prospects do.
Passion of his, yeah. Passion of his. You could say, really good guy, thinks about others, potentially good teammate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next up from Alex, he says, hey guys, Niner fan here, live in the Bay Area. Didn't know about y'all since I mostly listen to KNBR. Frown you through Cowherd, and I appreciate the local focus. Keep up the good work. Now, all this stuff about Lance is coming out. about how his throwing motion was screwed up, causing him fatigue, how his technique was bad before he allegedly fixed it this offseason. Does this reflect poorly on the Niners scouting department and Kyle? If he had bad technique, how'd they miss on that and draft him third? If something had to be fixed in his third offseason instead of his first offseason, doesn't that make the team look like they don't know what they're doing? Thanks! Exclamation point.
Well, this reflects Kyle in the sense of he's not, once the season starts, I mean, he is dependent on, if you're not the starter on his offense, probably the assistant coaches. Like, he is not, because he's also the play caller. It's weird. It is his job if he's going to put all the chips in the middle of the table on this draft trade. Because, I mean, the organization's all in it together. But once he's drafted, like, what can Adam Peters and John Lynch do, right? It's his job to coach the guy up, him and the quarterback coach. But once the season starts, which is really training camp, he's really focused on week in, week out, the game plan, right? And getting his guys. So he's just not going to develop much beside on his own. And I would say that first year was all just kind of learning how to be a pro, not as much probably the mechanics of his game, which then they tried to do. Remember, the offseason was a big thing to go, but he was dealing with a finger that was still fucked up. Maybe got derailed. I think a lot of development as a rookie, if you're not going to start at any position, but definitely quarterback, when your head coach is the play caller. Andy Reid said this about Patrick Mahomes. He's like, yeah, when we had him start that last game of the season, I didn't know what I had. Why? I'd been calling the plays and dealing with Alex for the last 4 months. So I had Nagy and Doug and Alex, you take the playoff game plan this entire week. Don't even fuck with us. Me and Patrick will just spend the week together. And Andy, he told me this. He said this publicly. That's when I found out, like, guy's a little smarter than I thought. He hadn't been spending, beside, like, obviously you're sitting next to him in meetings, but all day, every day during the season is focused on that given week, the defense, right? The plays you're going to call, the game plan. There isn't much. It's hard to explain if you haven't really seen it firsthand or even these practices. It's so much easier when you just say it, development, and like that's not the reality of the way it works. Like what happened last year with Drake Jackson? The 49ers needed extra pass rush. They just scrapped it. Just we'll see you next year, buddy. Right? And that
development means years, right?
And when did Drake get scrapped? Sneaky, like toward Halloween, early November. It wasn't like everyone really noticed it toward the end, but he had been phased out. And no one's like, oh, he's not developed. No, we don't have time. We're playing the fucking Falcons this week. We're playing Seattle the next week. We got a Thursday game the following. You just don't have time.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it didn't work with Trey, if it doesn't work out with Trey, then all of that stuff that Alex asked, like, is legitimate consideration, right? Were they not on the same page for how much development it's going to take? Were they not on the same page with what he's capable of doing and what Kyle would do ideally? Or
I think you have to acknowledge that they overzealous. I don't know if it's the wrong. They leaned optimism with this, and then they got it, and they realized it was probably more. They bit off a little more than they could chew, given where their franchise was.
Yeah,
that's clear. I mean, clear.
Yeah, and the injuries, I'm sure they would say threw off the timeline, but development means multiple years, right? Development. I'm with Alex, who's like, well, if something had to be fixed in his third offseason instead of the first offseason, that doesn't make them look like they know what they're doing. I guarantee, I'm sure if we go back and look at stories, they were talking about footwork development in year 1 and year 2 and year 3. But, baseball players and their swing, golfers and their swing, these are not necessarily, big leaguers are talking about swing developments in their 20s, late 20s, obviously 20s, early 30s. JD Martinez famously changed his swing. Justin Turner famously changed his swing. Josh Donaldson. These guys were not 22 when they finally figured their swing out, right? Golfers, I'm sure we could get into it the same. So, the idea that like, well, if you had any work to do on your throwing motion, that should have been over and done with year 1. I think you've always said this, and it's what you just said. Like, you don't get to just spend 8 hours a day, 365, everybody with their scalpels out, digging in on a quarterback's throwing motion and his footwork. You got other stuff to do. So these things can take years, and you spend some time developing, and then you go spend 8 months game planning, and you don't have as much time to spend on development. And that's got to get, you got to put that aside until the next offseason. It just takes time.
Let me take this one really quick.
Okay, John's got a call to get.
No, just see if they call back.
All right. Next up, this is from Chris Stillowberg. North Dakota State fan turned fan of you guys. Not a Niners guy, but I'll listen to you talk about anything. Keep killing it. Curious, what do you think Brooks Koepka's PGA win does to the golf landscape with the Ryder Cup coming up? More majors than Rory now. Just wild. Thanks. This might have been May 22nd. Was this it was a pre-live question, but it was still a legitimate question just about golf, Ryder Cup, live guys and Ryder Cup.
Yeah, he's on as of right now. He's the number 2 guy on points.
Are you trying to win?
Yeah, they like him. I mean, they talked about him coming back last year, or I mean, after last year, like there were rumblings.
He's been on it
that he
before
wanted to come back. Yeah, he's. One problem I have with this whole thing is I've seen stories of that they're going to find these guys to come back. How can you find me to come back when you ended up doing business with them?
You can't.
But they're going to.
They're going to take that money and give it to like Rory? And
no, they're just going to make them pay. Yeah, I don't know if that's set in stone, but this is all that's being talked about. Is like there's going to be a penalty for what they did. Even it's a
crazy.
fucked up. It's a very fucked up situation, which is going to make this week. I think the most. I've never understood this. Is like so many people, and I listen to a lot of golf podcasts, watch a lot of Golf Channel. I would say the golf media, from Chambly to all the writers to majority of the podcasters, which. Beside no laying up, a lot of the podcasters started kind of as writers, are obviously very anti-Saudi Arabia and the landscape of that. I've always thought about this in like political television because ultimately if you're on TV, if you're making a lot of money doing it, I don't actually believe that you care that much. So I would be doing anything that's good for business. I always struggle with media people like in sports that don't root for the best outcome of the most people watching. That makes your job the most important. Like the most important thing is everyone gets together. So the Saudi Arabia elements of it all, like who gives a fuck? The best thing that could possibly.
But that's not
happen.
the most important thing in journalism. If we're talking about pure
journalism is
not.
Kind of like I don't.
I disagree. The thing you cover thriving is not what the goal of journalism is.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the New York Times writer. Like I'm talking about the guy that's making 7 figures on TV. Like his job is the most people watching is that keeps that thing coming. I understand if you're the writer. Like I understand.
But there's a difference between the news and the PGA. Like if you're on PGA TV, where the PGA success is directly, like you can't kill off the PGA and then move on to the next story. Like you could, let's bury this candidate and move on to the next candidate, right?
Well, no, my point is like if you're on Golf Channel, the most important thing is most people watch golf to keep your business going.
I agree with you.
That's Brandel Chambly or Eamon Lynch or whatever. Just like if you're on CNN, if you're Jake Tapper,
that's why
you have way more people watching when Donald Trump is in office. I get you hate him or whatever, but ultimately you're making 5-10 million. You actually truly don't give it. Like when I see The View, like none of these people I believe actually care. I truly believe that to my core. Just like with the Saudi Arabia thing, I get in theory they hate it, but it doesn't impact. It actually hurts. It's like. It eventually definitely was going to, but now they're all back together is going to be good for the interest, the drama, people talking about it. Like
the Brandel Chambly would say, I was rich whether live or happened or not. So I had the financial security to just give my opinion, right? Now, maybe he doesn't have the job security. We'll see. I don't know, but
no, well, I mean, I think I do think they believe like they're standing for something.
Yeah.
I don't know. There are these elements. Like ultimately, you're in the business of most people caring. That's what anyone on television. Like I don't believe a journalist exists on television. If you have a television show, is that fair? Do you disagree with that?
I hadn't thought about it that way. I mean, I think journalists go on TV. The question is, can you be a journalist if you get paid based solely on ratings?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a contributor like you're going on CNN, you're going on Fox News. I'm talking about you host a show.
As a staunch pro-journalism person, I think there's some good logic to that.
It does not exist because you can't function.
It's conflicting mode. That's where people would say, like, in the model of The Athletic, where you get the more subscribers that a particular writer got, the more safer that person is, I guess, in theory. I mean, a bunch of people got laid off, or some people got laid off today. That it inhibits, like, sometimes the thing that has to be written is boring as opposed to writing the most interesting thing. But those are two different things. You need some commitment from the organization that there are things that we need to do, even if they are not the things that will make us the most money on this particular thing.
Yeah, if your business is the ratings, if you are not, because that is how you're going to survive in your show and how you are judged and how that's the business literally you are in. The only thing you should be worrying about if you want to do it for a while is what is going to keep that going for a long period of time and have the most people watching you, because that's the whole point of, your show. And for the Golf Channel, for example, it's not an apples to apples, but it's just, ultimately is like, I do believe that they think, like, I think everyone is on the same page saying, like, the Saudi Arabians, this is sketchy to do business with them. Like, I don't think you're going to find that much disagreement there. Like, yeah, no shit. Bad people do bad things. Like, oh, breaking news there, Brandel. And I like Brandel. But my point is, like, this is all good for golf when you're in the business of people watching you. Because your job is predicated on eyeballs coming to the interest of the game.
It's not even really clear exactly what the PGA and the Saudis are doing.
No one knows.
Okay. It could not happen, right? Is that possible?
Well, it could get blocked by the government for sure. For anti-competitive.
It's not. But also, like, the deal, like a deal this big coming together in 7 weeks. If you told me any deal that massive came together in 7 weeks, unless they're working around the clock for 7 weeks, I would question, like, how much they have actually figured out. 7 weeks.
A lot of people thought that it broke because rumors it was going to leak.
That they were talking. So they decided.
And if it leaks before that they can get a hold of it, they get to control. He got to meet with the players the next day after he announced it, that it, like, a journalist breaks the story, then kind of all hell breaks loose. Because then you're reacting instead of being proactive, which I think they would say they were.
Yeah. Interesting. Next up from Alan. I don't understand entertaining the thought of getting rid of Kyle Shanahan as head coach. They've turned this franchise from a joke into one of the premier teams in the league and seen consistent success, even while dealing with some incredibly unfortunate seasons. It's said over and over again that it's hard to win a Super Bowl, but if you're always just a threat, you're a high-level team, consistently putting yourself in the mix. I contend it's ridiculous to think that's not close to enough. As a fan, I'd rather see us losing NFC title games every year than ever watch Tom Sula or Chip Kelly coach the Niners again. Love the pod. I feel like once a mailbag, we get a question about Kyle Shanahan. Like, what does it take for him to be on the hot seat? And I think our answer has been pretty consistent that we're not even close to a hot seat with Kyle Shanahan. But would you agree with that?
He just won 13 games and went to the NFC Championship game. And won. He beat the fucking Dallas Cowboys and the division rival Seattle Seahawks in back-to-back playoff games at home. He hosted 2 home playoff games against Jerry Jones and Pete Carroll and won them both. I mean, it's like, what the fuck are we... And I'm not saying that this guy believes he should be fired. He doesn't, but
right.
I'm of the belief this is more of like a deep internet conversation than some casual conversation happening with the overwhelming majority of people. Because there's a difference of being critical on an individual game and thinking that this coach gots to go. Because I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think most casual people think Kyle gots to go, but I do think sports fans just generally are always open to a conversation about their coach's job security more than just on the deep recesses of Reddit. So what I wanted to do was not so much debate it, because you and I agree and we've talked about it. We've said the same thing repeatedly and we don't think it's close to being a situation. But the one thing I re-examined is, when we've talked about this a lot of times, Andy Reid's Philadelphia Eagles tenure gets brought into this as a Kyle thing, because he didn't win a championship in 13 years. And so the question with Kyle is, how long can you go without winning a Super Bowl? if that's the ultimate goal, right? And Jed's words get thrown at him that, hey, you said this about winning championships.
He's pivoted since.
Right, rightfully or smartly. But how long can you go?
We want to be in the mix, guys.
Which, honestly, if I were an owner, it would be about winning championships and trying to win a championship. But I do think you'd understand if you haven't won one if you haven't won one in a long time, there is an element of let's just be in the mix. Do we think our coach has a fatal flaw that prevents him from winning the championship? And if so, do we have a road to finding a coach that is better than that guy? But what I just wanted to address the Andy comparison, because I've made it before, like Andy Reid, 13 years, blah, blah, blah. And you are you're an expert on this. You worked for Andy Reid in Philadelphia. So Kyle's first 6 years, this is what we've just went through. 531 winning percentage, 2 division championships, 3 postseasons, 3 NFC championship games, 1 Super Bowl loss. Andy's first 6 years, Kyle had a 531 winning percentage. Andy 666. He was 64-32. 4 division titles in his first 6 years. 5 postseasons. 4 NFC championship games. 1 Super Bowl. They lost it. And I think what gets said a lot is, look at Andy's tenure. That guy went to 4 NFC championship games. Or actually went to 5 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl, and he still got fired. But I don't think that's the right way to look at Andy. Now, you tell me, because you were there. I think what happened was Andy got fired because he didn't win a playoff game for the last 4 years he was there. It's not about the first 6 years. It's how it ended at the very end. 4 playoff appearances in his last 8 years. 4 playoff appearances in 8 years. 1 NFC title game. And in the last 4 years, wild card loss, and then missed the playoffs 8-8, missed the playoffs 4-12. And he didn't get fired because he went to 5 NFC championship games and didn't win a Super Bowl. I don't think, but you were there, so what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember he made Juan Castillo his defensive coordinator. There was some Hail Mary.
When was that? Was that going into
would have been
last year?
Second to last year, yeah. And then Juan got fired the third year, the year he was fired, and Todd Bowles came up, but it was too late. Didn't matter. There were questions had it run its course the previous season. The year that he went 8-8, the year before he was fired, I'm pretty sure that we were 4-8 and won the last 4 games, so there was like some positive momentum.
Okay.
But it was kind of just, sometimes you just needed a change. But this is year 13 and 14. So Kyle's not even halfway through that yet. And so far his hiring, right, in terms of his defensive coordinator, because like Andy, his success is going to be predicated, a big part of it, on something that he has nothing to do with. Besides, philosophically, Andy and Kyle are very similar. Like, they love blue chip defensive linemen. They have no problem investing resources over there. Like, they don't just they don't hoard all the resources to their side of the ball. If sometimes, honestly, like, they feel they can figure it out, in certain times, in certain positions with guys, like, let's upgrade here. Like, no, I love this guy. He's a BYU grad. Or Kyle's like, he's a little white guy. I can make him happen. He's kind of got this Belichick complex to him. But, like, I appreciate that because they understand how important defense is. I would say one major difference is a large percentage of Andy's success in Philly early on. Like, he had Jim Johnson, for I think almost a decade. So he had one defensive coordinator who was kind of viewed as like his Vic Fangio, and it was awesome. He was sweet. He was elite. I mean, he was Sean McDermott. He was creating all these assistant coaches, Ron Rivera, and then he died. It was just it really, I think, kind of threw them out of course. And Sean McDermott, who, looking back, shouldn't have been fired, but at the time there was so much pressure because they had been so close. I think Jed is a little different because he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but the Eagles had never won a Super Bowl as a franchise. It's weird. Like, was last year a failure? Yeah, because the way it ended with Purdy, but ultimately, like, a lot of people, if you're just our age, right, there's been a long period of time between those Eddie DeBartolo days and some of those years when Pete Carroll and Matt Leinart, wouldn't leave USC. Right, because they didn't want to get drafted and didn't want to coach the 49ers. So I think Andy was almost a product of his own success. The bar was like, you're right there, but he couldn't quite get over the hump, where it doesn't feel like that here. It just doesn't. And it shouldn't, because let's just say Kyle next year wins 2 games. Let's just say worst 49ers worst team in the league. And it is ugly. Now, ultimately, it would lead to Caleb Williams or Drake May. It'd feel sweet, but once you got there, but it'd be the ugliest season ever, right? It'd be worse than Tom Sula because you would just come off the NFC Championship game, not 8-8 or whatever. Like, okay, let's say
I don't know if it'd be worse than Tom Sula, but we can.
You know what? It'd be pretty bad as you were going through it, losing every game.
The Tom Sula thing felt so. Part of what made that so bad was like you would whiffed so badly on your head coach. You know, that was the embarrassment of that. Was
I'm just trying to set up a scenario that, like, okay, fire him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. For who? Like, you see most of these coaches, like Shane Steichen, Gannon. Like, just look at the coaches that typically get hired, right? You'd like D'Amico, but he's gone, right? D'Amico and Vrabels, right, are outliers. I mean, most guys stink.
D'Amico hasn't won an NFL game yet.
And listen, everyone likes Sean O'Connell, looks the part, buddies with McVay, won 13 games, got KO'd in the first round at home by the Giants. Kevin O'Connell. And now they're cutting guys, right? Dalvin's gone, Thielen's gone. Like, what if all of a sudden this year he goes 8-9, and then they pivot off Kirk Cousins? Like, the Vikings fans will be like, "Is this guy any good?" It'll happen fast. Brian Daboll. Coach of the year, 9 wins. It's not like he's coach of the year. I'm bullish on the guy, but what if this year he wins? He goes 6-10. A lot of one-score games don't go his way. It's like, are we sure we got Bill Parcells? Number 2.0? Bald, shorter, fatter version? It changes fast. Like Kyle, over a 4-year span, has kind of proven to me, like, the fucking guys get his squad ready to win some big games. I've seen a lot with a lot of different quarterbacks.
My ultimate point is when you compare him to Andy didn't get fired for going to NFC Championship games. Just like Kyle's first 6 years have been.
Andy was just there a lot. Like, I do think the conversation is a lot different at 14 years than it is at 5 or 6.
For sure. But my point is, like, I think people look at the Andy thing and simplify it to Andy got fired because he didn't win a championship. Andy was on the hot seat because he didn't win a championship. But ultimately, at the end, they got fired because they went 4 years without winning a playoff game.
But for as awesome as, like, it's been with Mahomes now, all these 3 Super Bowl appearances, 5 years, 2 Super Bowl wins. He had like a 5-year stretch with Alex where it was just they were not even Kyle Shanahan. They won, I think, 1 playoff game over the 5 years. Now they were winning the division or a wild card team all the time, but they were getting bounced by Mariota or Andrew Luck. It just wasn't. But I think Chiefs fans had just known, like, we had just seen Todd Haley at a disaster like this could suck a lot worse, right? So
Would Kyle sign Alex Smith if he was available?
Like that version of Alex?
Yeah.
I think he would like him a lot.
Love him, right?
Yes.
I think it's pretty underrated that Alex was the quarterback of the Chiefs for 5 years. I think that's pretty underrated. I think it feels like it was 3 or 2.
It was a lot longer than people realize. 14, 15, 16. Mahomes was drafted in 17. Maybe it was 4.
No, you're right. It was 13, 14, 15,
13,
16. And then
he got 17, which was his best year of his career.
I know.
When Mahomes redshirted.
And almost loses his leg. Last one, John.
I would say it was a bizarre tenure because I remember one year they won like 11 or 12 games. This was a 16-game season. It was like, he didn't even throw a touchdown to a wide receiver. And it was like, well, their wide receivers aren't that great.
Yeah, it was, what's his name?
They did have Macklin.
No, who was the other guy they had?
Dwayne Bowe.
Who they drafted, Dwayne Bowe. Yeah, that was a pretty incredible stat. That was a Niners-esque stat.
But then they got Kelsey and Tyreek, and his stats, nothing like Mahomes, but were incredible for Alex. 27 touchdowns for Alex Smith. Mahomes, like 50, no problem. You know? Andy wants you to throw the ball.
They went from what did we say? 17 was Alex's last. Yeah, so that was no, that's not a good year. That was 16. Sorry, hold on. 17. Alex threw 26 touchdowns, 5 picks. I mean, the 5 picks makes 26 touchdowns feel like 35 touchdowns. And then 26 and 5, and then Mahomes takes over and throws 50.
One thing I wonder,
John, they went from 26 to 50.
They lost at home
with the backup.
A pretty devastating game to Mariota. I think Travis Kelce got concussion, didn't play like the second half. Let's say they win that game. Let's say they win 2 playoff games and are in the AFC Championship game and still end up losing. I assume it was the Patriots. They lose Alex Smith to the Patriots, whatever. Are we sure that they don't just redshirt him twice? Part of it was like he had been awesome, but we had got knocked out in the first round. What if they had won some games?
Everything that you say that Brett Veach is, everything Brett Veach has said, but you've talked to him and Andy about how good Andy.
I think the ending to the season was so devastating.
Yeah. What was Alex's contract status? Like, they did trade him. Didn't they trade him for a second and a player swap? Is that what it was?
Yeah, second and one of the Fuller brothers, I think.
That's a pretty good trade.
Yeah. Maybe they would have done it no matter what.
I don't know. It's a good question. All right. Last one here. This comes from Thomas S. He says, hey, I'm a subscriber to the YouTube channel, and I have something to say about quarterback bias. First of all, and I think this is an important note from Thomas. First of all, I don't think we have a legitimate quarterback on this team. If y'all want to ride with somebody who threw less than 220 yards in 5 of his 8 games and had a lot of good starting field position, that's on you. But acting like Purdy was putting up Mahomesian type numbers is asinine. The Cowboys figured him out. The Eagles sidelined him. If the Cowboys don't drop that red zone pick, Purdy would have lost to them. For the Lance stuff, I get it. No, we never had McCaffrey. No, we never had Kittle. Debo was super out of shape, and Elijah Mitchell was injured less than half of his debut as a permanent starter. Matter of fact, Kittle was injured for Trey's 21 start against the Cardinals, too. The only time Trey had Kittle was in the season on the line against the Texans, and he had a pretty righteous game. So, say there's no bias. There's at least some of it if we leave out the pertinent facts. Niners won't win a Super Bowl until the quarterback position's figured out, either by getting a legit QB coach or going after a QB Shanahan doesn't have to develop. Otherwise, we'll keep on losing deep in the playoffs. Thanks, Thomas S. So he says we don't have a legitimate starting quarterback on the roster, but then we get a lot of reasons why Lance hasn't gotten a fair shake.
To think that, one, I do think that Cowboy game was a very good reflection of the Cowboys' defense and Dan Quinn. Like, that was a defense that could have gone toe-to-toe with – the 49ers' offense at the time was absolutely rolling at every position, right? And that defense – I remember watching that game thinking, like, this defense could – if Dak doesn't fuck it up, could win them the Super Bowl. Like, they could beat the Eagles. They were formidable. Their head coach, backwards hat, was just kind of vibing, and they were playing.
They're DC, yeah.
To think that Trey Lance could have won that game,
That's not what he's saying.
I know, but I think it's less about he was a pick away. Yeah, it's a playoff game. Sometimes you just got to win it 17-15 or 20-17, right? Or 21-18. Like, it's less about to me, the statistics of how you got away with one. Like, yeah, welcome to football. Right? That's at the highest level in the biggest game against the best defense. As a fucking rookie, I'm not screaming at this guy. My point is, like, I have a harder time judging Purdy in that moment where he actually showed out pretty well as the game went on, just in terms of carrying himself against a defense that was just ready to injure some people. The reason he got injured in the other game was just there's no way around it. Like, I believe, like, if you gave Kyle Shanahan an extension tomorrow, I would have no problem with it. But that was a terrible play call. And he'll never admit it, and there's an arrogance to the reasoning for that because we don't understand play calling or whatever. You put Tyler Kroft on a blue-chip, Pro Bowl, all-pro level pass rusher, I can't blame the quarterback when his elbow gets thrown the other way.
No, not only that, you don't get to call it bad luck when the play blows up. You don't get to say, well, that's just football sometimes. That's, like, I would go a step further and say you don't get to say bad luck when you go 7-step drop with that one-on-one matchup happening.
In a play-action situation that a lot of the Eagles, like, they're just going to be comfortable seeing that type stuff. Like, it was just he didn't bite at all. Just say, all I ever wanted out of him on that one is, like, if I could have that one over, of course I'd like it over. And he didn't even get remotely, like, I would have looked at another play. It was like, I'd fucking call that thing over
I think we're
again.
more likely, yes. We're more likely to get...
I tell Kroft, bend those knees a little bit more, hands inside. It's like, oh my God. I don't blame Tyler Kroft.
John, Brock's got to get rid of the ball, quote unquote. Brock knows he's got to get that out, it'd be something like that.
I do not blame the tight end on that situation. What is he going to do?
Just hang on for dear life, which is not quite what happened. But to Thomas's point about Lance, all the stuff, I think there's a lot of fair stuff that Thomas says about Trey in terms of he didn't have McCaffrey, guys around him hurt. I would just say he started 3 games. Well, he started 4. One was in a monsoon in Chicago. Throw that one out. I think it's less about what he did as a player. It's kind of like what Brock did as a player, which if any quarterback does what Brock did last year, a young quarterback, the correct response is not – the correct response is let's give him more snaps and see what happens, which is what they're going to do. They haven't – I agree that he hasn't put up Mahomesian numbers or that he's not Mahomes, and we got some things to figure out. He still has more to prove. Careers and seasons are long, and he played half a season. He did it incredibly well and has earned more playing time because of it. I mean, Trey got like the Cardinals, and then he got a long break, and then he got Houston, and then he got an off season, and then he got the Bears, and then he got 20 snaps against the Seahawks or whatever it was. That's it. That's not a lot. The one thing is it goes beyond just what he did. The play calling also spoke volumes, right? And Trey ran the ball 16 times against the Cardinals. He had run the ball 7 times against 9 pass attempts against Seattle. Jordan Love, who by all accounts is also a developmental quarterback for the Packers, his rookie year, he got 2 starts. Well, he got 1 start and 1 long outing. He had 51 pass attempts and 5 rushes. That does tell us something about what Kyle Shanahan thought and thinks of how to win with Trey Lance.
And I'm pretty sure I have to go back to look at his combine, but I always thought 4.74. Jordan Love's an athlete. He's I think he's Trey Lance-y in the sense of physical attributes, 6'3", 220. Like when he was coming out of college, raw product.
Yeah, flash throws.
Big arm.
Yeah.
Kyle does not, whatever reason, this is not our opinion. All you had to do is, like you said, break down the numbers. The head coach, who is the play caller, does not think he can throw. Yet Purdy comes in, he's calling bombs on the first play of the game when he's never done that in 6 years as the quarterback or coach.
In the pouring rain, called 2 back-to-back.
It's crazy.
Matthew, this actually might be as good a way to put it as any. Matthew, pink onion pizza. Go get the ham pod pizza, which I think Matthew still has on the menu. I should go back. He says, I wonder if he still has the Garoppolo on the menu. He says, what would the Trey hype be like if he had put up Purdy's numbers? It'd be off the charts.
They would lead NFL Live, NFL.com.
They already do.
Yeah, but I'm just saying from the way they kind of hype up a Tua or a Justin Fields, it'd be relentless.
Yeah. Last thing, Ben Rebel says, coming to Scottsdale this weekend, what 5 courses should I be calling to get tee times for, John?
Feels a little last minute. I guess the summer's
For
probably
5 rounds this weekend?
I'd go TPC, the main one in Champions. You can go double there. I'd go Weekapaw. They got 2 courses, so that's 4. I think Troon's a tad bit overrated, but that's always on some where people play.
What is the Troon course? What's it called?
Just True North. It's hard. Then you could get off your beaten path, the Whirlwinds, the Ravens. These are public courses you could probably play right now. Some are 60, 70, $80. The Troons and the TPCs probably some are, $250 maybe. Troon's hard, and it's really far up north. But it's one of the premier, like you meet someone, they went to Scottsdale, they usually play Troon.
Got it. All right, that's what we got today. Anything else to add?
Yeah, anything else going on?
Who we got this week?
The Knights?
Golden Knights. Who we got this week in the Opie? The U.S. Opie?
That's a good question.
Scotty? Homa?
Koepka? This is...
Koepka. I mean, yeah, why not?
LA, there's going to be a lot of Homa, Morikawa.
Tommy Fleetwood?
Patrick
no
Cantlay
career
is going to be
wins.
another guy.
Oof. How about Tommy Fleetwood? Still no career PGA wins.
He's
I
made
feel
a
like
lot
I've
of
seen
money
him with a
doing
green
that.
jacket on, but that has not occurred.
Little less crazy for, a European guy. Like, how long has he truly been over here full time? 4 or 5 years, right? He's won across the pond in the...
He has, yep.
They've named 7 different names, but the DP World Tour, European Tour.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear it's inevitable. I mean, Nick Taylor, the guy that won the tournament on just an incredible putt. He almost won the waste management this year. He was in the last group with Scotty Scheffler. Like he's a real fucking. It's not like he lost to a complete rando.
No. 72-foot putt on the 4th playoff hole. I thought it was. Nance called it one of the greatest Canadian sports moments in history. You know what I thought? You want to talk about hyperbole? I actually thought this watching it. Is it possible? The answer to this is no, but just the thought crossed my mind that, like, given the scene, that would be that's better for that guy than a major. The answer is no. I know that, but like that thought crossed my mind. Like, God, this is pretty awesome. The Canadians all rooting for him. All his buddies come running out. Well, not all of them.
I think it was 60 since 1959. A Canadian had won the
54.
Canadian Open. 54. So
54,
it's been a while.
And it's the first time since the 19 teens that a Canadian-born golfer won it. Whoever won it in 54 wasn't Canadian-born, whatever that means. But
Nance call was pretty good.
I'm guessing it's from the anthem, right? What would he say? Like power and for nation and glory or something. I immediately Googled.
You're right.
Oh, Canada lyrics, and it's from the song. It's from their national anthem.
Okay.
What does he say? Like for glory and
and freedom,
prosper. Yeah. No, it was freedom. It was freedom for freedom. He did that for freedom. But
do you think Adam Hadwin, who finished 12th? I looked it up yesterday, made $178K, also Canadian. I think one of Nick Taylor's really good friends. Him, there was a Canadian contingent, right? You had Fleetwood's boys, Rose, Lowry, all the Ryder Cup, Euros.
Another guy that looked just like Lowry. Who was that guy?
And England.
Rick Shields?
You had
Looked like Rick
Lowry.
Shields.
You had Rose. One other cat that fits under that mold. And then you had Mike Weir, little guy, Sapporo, 24-ounce. Corey Connors, who in theory should be the best Canadian, but he can't putt. And then Hadwin, who's a little under the radar, pretty good player. I guess is Nick Taylor's like best friend. Like they
grew up together, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, they are boys.
They played the
When
same
you're
country
watching it
club growing
live
up.
and you see Taylor's caddy look and almost look like something bad's going to happen, but he's in the middle of this incredible moment, but he's leaving like, no, he's cool. And then when you see the angles of the dude, it's one thing to form tackle. It's another to pick up and drive.
Truck stick, right? As he's spraying champagne still. And then Corey Connors says, forget him. I'm going to just go for the hug.
Corey Connors looks and walks away. It
was amazing.
It had to hurt.
feet.
I mean, it was
a great hit. Maybe it was solid that it didn't hurt.
Do you think he gets reprimanded, or it's like that's kind of what we want? I mean, there's a lot going on.
Unless you hand him a thing that says, Adam, this guy's allowed on the course, on the green. Seems a little excessive. Like he was in the I wish a motherfucker would mode, but
it probably felt to the security guard because when you see the behind shots, what do you say? 25,000 people just around the greater green.
Yeah, great question. Wow.
Didn't it? I wonder to him, it felt like people were rushing to get to them. Maybe.
Probably. I'd say like how many of the regular patrons have a bottle of Dom in their hands, but there's only so much you can process at once. Once the quarterback goes hut hike, you just go tackle the guy with the ball.
I think it would have been a major problem. Like what if he shattered his rib and Hadwin, who's like, bro, I'm playing in the US Open this year. Like,
I know.
I'm potentially going to be a tour champion guy. Like, I mean, does he sue RBC? Like what happens then? I mean, that'd be a problem.
That'd be really bad. Yeah.
If you are completely fine, I think you do sign up for that because it's an incredible tale the rest of your life.
It makes
everyone's talking about it this week.
I apparently this guy is beloved by everybody.
Security guard?
It's pretty rare. No, the guy that won. Pretty rare this was not a team event. I mean, this is an individual event to have other players come storming the green for you. I've never seen that in golf. Like that's pretty incredible. Like they reacted. Who was the guy? What was the putt? When the U.S. team Ryder Cup was wearing those awful shirts.
Justin Leonard.
Yeah, the Justin Leonard putt. Like that was. Yeah. It felt pretty cool.
I didn't watch much of it till yesterday, but I was flipping channels on Saturday. There's a hole where when the Canadian guys would go through, and maybe they did this for the famous guys too, they would start singing "Oh Canada." Like it would kind of turn into waste management. Like it was Colton O's kept saying, like, this fucking place is bananas. And they were just saying it all day. Clearly they're drinking. I mean, it's
people. And then with the playoff holes, everyone's running from 18 to 9 back to 18.
Yeah, it was.
Somebody had to return the flag, and it was a guy in like tight jean shorts. See that? Like the flag had been removed from the 9th hole. They had to bring a flag back out.
Well, because that's what I thought they were pointing at, is like, I wonder if someone's stealing the ball and the flag. Right?
Yeah.
But it turns out they were just pointing at that. It also hit me, the flag. I think Jim's like, that's a maple leaf flag. Does a maple leaf taste like? I was fascinated by the maple leaf. I'd never really thought about, Toronto Maple Leafs. What is the maple leaf? It's clearly a big
maple tree.
Yeah. I don't know.
More on that next time. Thanks for hanging, everybody.